congressman, that was really nice. And it's really nice being a former congressman right now. But if you can only imagine. But what's even nicer is to look around this room and to see all those of you from so long ago that are still involved, but especially the new people that are involved as well. And to listen to Erin up here, having the courage to tell her story, listening to the profiles of these wonderful award winners. I mean, back when I was district attorney and I did face, Troy, that kind of case-by-case challenge of children that were telling things that I just couldn't stand to hear. And yet, a criminal justice system that needed to hear these things, and an offender that needed to be held accountable, and a family that needed resources, and community professionals that needed to come together better to do the job that we needed to be doing. 26, 27 years ago, out of a task force that I pulled together in the community, I recommended on stage in a grammar school there in Huntsville that we start, and I used the words Children's Advocacy Center. I had been to California to try to bring two boys, brothers, back who had been tortured, and I was not using that word, tortured, by their mother's boyfriend. I had them ready to go to court. The offender saw that. He jumped bail, left the courthouse, and then we had to find him and then get those boys 9 months later, critical 9 months in their life, ready to come back to the court. And I've been to the Children's Institute out there in California and looked at that interview facility there, that private treatment facility there. And on stage that night I said, we're going to have a Children's Advocacy Center here in my smallish community of Huntsville, Alabama. If we can do it here, they can do it anywhere. I didn't think we could do it. I wasn't going to say that to anybody else, but I'd go home going, you hear what you just said? And then even on the streets of California, one of my assistant DAs that was with me out there trying to get these two boys that were up in the desert north of LA where they'd been reunited with their father at Edwards Air Force Base. And Susan Moquin, who was a judge in our community as well, had been an assistant DA, she said, are you crazy? Where are you going to get the money to be able to do this? And I said, well, even if we're not able to do it, even if we focus on what we want to do, we'll make the system better. And maybe we'll get a little part of a building somewhere. But I had this house in mind, and I rented the house, and we started a local, what we thought was a local training program, which has morphed into a national symposium that's now existed, Chris, for many, many years, depending on how you count it. I think we're at 25, 26 number of years, but we worked 2 in 1 year there. We were on a roll there. And I was so young and idealistic, nobody could get in my way. No local folks, nobody owned this issue. Some folks thought they owned the issue, or some would think they owned the issue. And we were professionals coming together, doing what we needed to do. And I took a 12-year-old girl back to my center years later after we had just handled her case with her grandmother horribly. And she said to us there, the professionals, what took so long? What was so hard about this? And it's difficult to explain that. But 25 years we've been doing this, and to see 300 plus of you take your time and spend your money to come to Washington, D.C. You're going to call on the Hill now, where I want you to know things are very, very different than they have been in a long time. This is a very, the partisanship here is overwhelming. Today we've got primaries going on around the country. We'll find out today if Senator Blanche Lincoln survives. You've got members that you're going to call on that are facing pressures and struggles back home. I talked to a number of those members. My strength up here was relationships on both sides of the aisle. You know, fortunately with our child abuse issues, they don't wear a party label, nor should they. And we had such a network of support caused as much by you, your calls on the Hill, the members that you call on, you educate them about what you're doing. When I was there, I would see these members in my committees, members that I knew but not so well, and they'd say, wait a minute, you're the guy that started this back in Alabama that my folks are telling me about. How can I help? And I can think of so many examples. Rush Holt from New Jersey, and he and I were on the Intelligence Committee together. And we were facing a lot of very serious issues post 9/11, and I helped him learn about how to work the appropriations process because he wasn't on the appropriations committee. and how to help his local CAC. I visited with as many of these programs as I could in many places around the country, nice places around the country, nice villas around the country. Locally here, I work with a local board to try to get a program started in the District of Columbia, the Safe Shores program that was finally born. Now it's been a number of years ago. They're moving into their new Bundy Center school. We were promised a place, and then that was withdrawn. We were promised a place, and then that was withdrawn. I'd hoped, Teresa, in a prior life that we could have a working CAC and a National Children's Alliance resource center upstairs somewhere, so that people that would visit what is now around the world, that would come here and look at what we're doing and want to copy and want to know, would have this resource center, but they could also visit carefully a working CAC in the nation's capital. Well, we weren't able to pull that off, but they're moving into this Bundy school. They're having this kickoff in September. Eric Holder, the Attorney General, is going to be their keynote speaker. They've got a shot at getting the First Lady there. She's not said no. She's very interested in this. This is what your visits during times like this mean. They mean that you educate your members. Now, we've had such political turmoil here. The very place where our budget comes from, which the Justice Department money comes from, and our partnership with the Justice Department, Luann, has just been wonderful. I mean, like any other relationship, it's had a few ups and downs before you got there, but it's had no ups and downs since you've been there, and we appreciate you so much, and that partnership is so valuable. When in 1991, I was brand new here, and again, at that time, not afraid of too much, though I've learned to be afraid. Currently, I don't have the courage that I used to have when I was First District Attorney and then a member of Congress, but we wrote that Children's Advocacy Program Act. We started that appropriations process. We placed it. I wasn't on the Appropriations Committee at that time. I had to get there at a later time. But the very subcommittee where that money is in the House Appropriations Bill and the Senate Appropriations Bill is the Commerce, Science, Justice Appropriations Subcommittee. And that's where the rubber meets the road. And we have seen our budget grow and grow and grow during very difficult times. And it is important for you to have your members know the good work that you're doing. I would expect you're calling on your members that in whose district you're located. You want to tell them what the work means, and then you want to tell them what your affiliation, your membership is in the National Children's Alliance, and then where our money comes from, which is an appropriations in the Commerce, Science, Justice Appropriations Bill. Interestingly, the House Chair, Alan Mollahan, who has been such a good friend of mine, and I was on that subcommittee, so he was my chairman, and he helped us through thick and thin, kind of sort through bureaucratically some issues that we needed to sort through. He was defeated in a primary a few weeks ago, so he, of course, will finish out this year, but then he will be retired, forced retired at the end of this year. So there's a lot of change in the air and a lot of partisanship in the air, but your message should not be received in any way but a positive way about the work that you're doing and what we need to do together. Now, frankly, this year, November elections, this place is going to be a very, very different place next January. We're seeing some very interesting people get nominated around the country, and we'll see how this process works out in November. I'm a little freer to call it like I see it. Now, though I do go to the Hill a lot, so I'm a little bit careful of what I say, because I maintain excellent relations with both sides of the aisle still, and that's the way I would want it. I think that's the way the American people would want it. But we're not likely to finish this appropriations bill where our budget comes from until after the election. And it's not personal to your issues, commerce, justice. You've got a lot of issues, science. NASA's budget is in there, which is important to the area where I'm from, North Alabama, and to many other space center areas of the country. So you've got big budget issues there as well. It's not unusual for the budget process not to be completed until after the fiscal year expires. This year, of course, it'll be after the elections occur, but because this is such a remarkable political year, I just think the atmosphere is something we've got to watch very carefully. I don't see any threats to our budget. I see the process as something that we need to watch, because when they do a continuing resolution, continuing over beyond October 1, when the fiscal year runs out, that continuing resolution, this is legal